Did you get wet running in,
It's running pretty
staking
good now.
out, Aaron?
Not too bad.
We noticed as you left it was raining harder. We should have offered you an umbrella or something.
It's fine.
You like Granddaddy don't like to fool with an umbrella.
No. I have this rain jacket's nice, so it
Well, good.
gets the job done. Cool, we're good to go.
Okay.
We'll close out.
Yeah.
Feel free to just relax and, I don't know.
Just relax, and just like we're talking,
Just
huh?
look at me. Yeah.
Okay.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Greenbrier, Tennessee, and I lived there through elementary and middle and high school, and then I went away to college.
I was born in DeKalb County, Tennessee, a little community called Temperance Hall.
Okay.
But I was born in August, but that fall, my dad was a school teacher, and he was teaching school in Sequatchie County, Tennessee, Dunlap. So my first 6 years, you might say, was in Sequatchie County, Tennessee.
Okay.
But then we moved back to Temperance Hall, and we lived there for 4 years. And then we moved to Liberty, Tennessee, and we stayed there 2 years. And then we went to Greenbrier, Tennessee,
Okay.
and where my dad was principal of the high school. And that's where I met my wife, Reba.
Okay. That's awesome. So, how old were you whenever you got to Greenbrier?
I was in the 8th grade.
Grandmother, what were your parents' names and what did they do?
Okay, my parents were John and Jewel Anderson. My mother was a Webb,
Okay.
and my daddy worked for DuPont in Old Hickory and retired from there.
So what was DuPont?
It's well, they manufactured fabric then. I don't know. I'm sure they've expanded now.
Yeah.
They were very good to work for. They were good to their workers, their employees.
Mm-hmm.
My mother worked several years at the Baptist bookstore in Nashville.
Okay.
She rode the bus back and forth, and she really enjoyed it, but mostly she was a housewife most of her life. And my mother was an excellent cook, and she loved housekeeping, but she also enjoyed working part-time.
My dad's name was Haston, Haston Johnson. And as I mentioned before, he was a school teacher for 18 years. And he ended up with the 2 years I previously mentioned at Liberty, Tennessee, at Greenbrier, Tennessee.
Okay.
And after that, he went into the insurance business and stayed in that type of work until he retired. My mother was never full-time employed. During the World War II, there was a shortage of teachers, and she taught 1 year in an elementary school
Okay.
to kind of fill in for the shortage of teachers.
Y'all's first interaction together. That'd be a fun place to start.
Okay, our first interaction together was, we were just in some of the same classes at school, and he was a year ahead of me, so I don't think we ever had but one class together. Really, it was geometry. And then one day I got a call from him, and he asked me to go to a movie with him, and I was really shocked because that he would ask me. I figured that it would have been somebody else. And so from there, we just started dating a lot, and then, but he went away to college. He was 1 year older than I am. And so we had to communicate. We had to communicate with each other by letter. We didn't even call each other. couldn't afford. We didn't have a phone for a while, and then when we did, we couldn't afford to make long distance calls. But I do have a story that if you'd like for me to tell about writing to him.
Oh, yeah.
One day I got a letter back from him, and he said, "Is this what you do in your spare time, write invisible letters?" And I had sent him a blank piece of paper. I had a box where I kept my stationery. So I went and looked, and I had mailed him a blank piece of paper, and there was the letter. So I wrote him back and sent the letter, and he believed me. So
Did that worry you whenever you received a blank piece of paper?
No, I read between the lines, and I kind of understood what had happened.
That's funny. That's awesome. So let's see. So when y'all started dating, was that junior and senior year?
yes,
Okay.
we started dating when he was a senior and I was a junior. At the end of the school year,
Yeah. That's
those years.
So, Granddad, when did you first notice grandmother? Did you see her across the room and you're like, look at that fine lady over there? When did you first notice grandmother?
Well, your grandmother was a leader in her class, and she made really good grades. The fact of business is she was the salutatorian when she graduated from high school. And I guess knowing about her in that regard, plus she was a real pretty girl too.
I bet she was.
Knowing her in those two regards drew me to her.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's cool. Are y'all having fun?
Yeah,
having
we
fun,
are.
And I don't know if we'll have any fun telling about the breakup.
Uh-oh.
Oh, that was a long time ago. That's ancient history.
That's why we need this. All right. So Granddad was off at college, and so tell me what happened. I just remember a story about Granddad coming back, and I don't know. Tell us about that and how y'all broke up and how y'all ended up back together.
Well, it was very simple how we broke up. I just got a Dear John letter from him at Austin. He was going to Tennessee Tech, and I was going to Austin P. And so I didn't write him back or anything. I never did, and I just went on with my life, and I guess he went on with his. And then Tennessee Tech was playing Austin P at Austin P, and I started. I have to insert this. I worked in the bursar's office, and he paid me to take up tickets at ball games, and I started to ask him to get someone else to take up tickets because I didn't want to see Hugh, and but I needed the money, so I did it, and I saw him, and he told me that he was going to write me a letter, and I said, okay. And he did, and he wanted to see me and make up. So I didn't want the people in Greenbrier or my parents or anybody to know I was meeting with him. So I spent the night with my aunt and uncle in Nashville, and he picked me up, and we went out and we made up. And here we are today,
That's awesome.
68 years later.
So Granddad, what were you thinking writing that first letter? Was that hard to do?
I don't guess it was too hard, or I wouldn't have done it. But I don't know what precipitated me to do that.
Yeah. Did you probably thought it'd be difficult, the distance?
Well, that might have been part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
he told me he just didn't care anymore,
oh man. Well,
But it worked out okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how long? So from that point on, how long did you guys date until?
We about 6 months or 8 months.
Till we got married.
That's what it was about from that time on.
I was a senior, I believe, at Tennessee Tech. And fact of business is, she came to my graduation. And
After we made up.
Mhm.
Am I supposed to do that?
You're fine. No, y'all can.
We can do
Yeah,
that.
it's fine.
and shortly after that, shortly after I graduated in June, and about 2 weeks later, the draft was about to get me. And the Korean War was on, and I was about to be drafted, so I went and joined the Navy. But again, by long distance and letter writing and so forth, she arranged all of our wedding plans when I got a leave of absence for a few days from the Navy, and that's when we got married in 1951. And I stayed in the Navy for 4 years. And I would get some leaves and come home and visit with her. She spent her time during those 4 years with mostly her mother and dad, but some of the time with my mother and dad. In the meantime, our daughter Debbie was born during that time that I was in the Navy, and just before I got out of the Navy, why, Eddie was born.
How did you propose to grandmother?
It was just a normal thing for me to do at that particular point. I can't answer your question exactly. It was just something that I wanted real bad.
Did you take her out to dinner, or did you get down on a knee? Did that happen then?
Well, we had a date, certainly.
Yeah.
At that time. I don't know that I got down on my knees. I guess I would have.
He really wrote a penitent letter when he wanted to make up with me, and he I thought, well, I believe he really is sincere now, you know. Mm-hmm. He won't like my saying this, but he almost was begging me to give him another chance.
That's awesome.
So I was willing to do that.
This is the first time we ever talked about that.
Pulling it out of you.
Yeah, you pull things out that never has been discussed much before.
That's awesome. Then I'm doing my job.
Yeah.
Cool. So how long was that break in between?
Oh, it was
letters?
just from spring to late fall.
Okay.
I got the letter in the spring. It was the end of the basketball season because he came to Austin Peay to the ball game, and our anniversary is October the 24th. So that's about 6 or 8 months.
Okay.
And that's the longest 4 years of our marriage. It was kind of rough.
To begin with, right after we got married, I was stationed in Jacksonville, Florida, and she was teaching school at Greenbrier, and she quit teaching and came to Jacksonville, and we were together while I finished two different Navy schools in Jacksonville. We lived together and in a two-room apartment, and she worked while I would be going to the Navy base. She worked at a place called, what was the name of it?
I don't know now. I know it was down by the ocean or whatever.
It was a dry dock.
Yeah, a dry
company.
dock. That's what it was.
And but then I got transferred after about 6 or 8 months. I got transferred to Norfolk, Virginia. And from Norfolk, I got sent. I wasn't in Norfolk, but about 6 weeks probably, and they sent me to Inyo Kern, California, to go to another Navy school.
Okay.
And before I finished that school, I got orders to go to Newport, Rhode Island, to the Officers Candidate School. But about that time, while I was in OCS, Debbie was born. And I wanted to certainly be at home when Debbie was born. So I got a leave of absence from the school, and they said after I came back from a leave of absence, I could start over again in the school. But I went home during that period of time for about a week and a half while Debbie was a baby. Then I went back to the Navy. So I was in Newport, Rhode Island, going to Officers Candidate School when Debbie was born, and I got a leave of absence, and I went home so I could be with Reba and Debbie as a little baby for about a week and a half. And when I went back to Officers Candidate School in Rhode Island, why, I would have had to agree to stay in the Navy for 4 more years. Well, I'd already signed up for 4 years, a year or two before, and I didn't want to go commit to 4 more years, because I was ready to get out when my first 4 years was up. So rather than to stay in the Officers Candidate School, I asked them just to let me go just be a regular Navy guy, and instead of being an officer. So they agreed to do that, and they sent me to a ship for 2 years. The ship was the USS Cabot, a small aircraft carrier. And while I was on that ship, we were going to be in Philadelphia for some 3 or 4 months. And so Reba and Debbie came, and we came up there, and we rented another little apartment. And for the period of time that I was on that ship, and I got to come home at night to that apartment. I didn't have to stay on the ship at night except ever so often. And so we were together during that period of time for about maybe four months, maybe, before the ship went back out to sea. And so she went home again with Debbie, and that's pretty much my career.
Yeah. So there was a significant amount of time. Y'all really during the years you were in the Navy, y'all really weren't together.
No, we weren't.
A whole lot.
Two different times, but
Yeah.
but not just a whole lot.
Yeah, that would be tough. So let's see. So how long had you been in the Navy once Debbie was born?
Oh,
It's like a year after.
yeah, approximate.
About a year.
And then I didn't mention, but Eddie was also born just before I got out of the Navy.
So were you able to go home to see them, or were it?
Yeah, I went home to see them when Eddie was born.
Mm-hmm.
Sure did.
How was that for you? That had to be.
It was
Probably
hard.
a tough time.
It was
Mm-hmm.
a tough time.
Mm-hmm.
But we made it. I made it.
So once Eddie was born, and where did y'all move to first after the Navy?
I had a job as quick as I got out of the Navy, teaching school at the Halls High School in Knox County, Tennessee, Knoxville.
Okay.
And I stayed there just for 1 year. And Reba taught school at the same time, she had a teacher's certificate.
Okay.
And she taught school, and my mother and daddy lived in Knoxville, and they kept the children while she was at school. And we just lived in Knoxville 1 year, and I wasn't making as much money as I thought I ought to make. And so I was looking around for a job, and I found a job in Nashville with the General Electric Credit Corporation. And without going into a lot of detail about where we moved around, with that, we moved several times, but I worked with them for about 7 years,
Okay.
or maybe 8. And then they were moving me around considerably, and I got tired of moving with the family, and I decided I'd try something else. But so temporarily I got a school teaching job once again in Shelbyville, Tennessee. And as I mentioned, I assumed that it would be temporary, that I wasn't going to teach school the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking around for another job, and we found another job in Huntsville with a bank. And so I stayed with that bank for 30 years until I retired.
Okay.
And that's my working career.
And that's how our family ended up in Huntsville.
That's right.
So tell me, what during that time, like when was Johnny born?
He was born after, let's see, we stayed, how long did we stay in Knoxville, did you say, Hugh? Just 1 year? And then he got that job, and we moved to Donaldson, and we had been there. Did we live in Donaldson 4 years?
Or more.
And he was born in Nashville, but you know Donaldson's real close.
Mm-hmm.
But going back, I had finished my junior year of college.
Excuse me. You said Eddie was born at that time.
No, I meant Johnny, her daddy.
You meant Johnny.
That was wrong. That was wrong.
Let's take just a quick break real
Okay.
quick.
Okay. You want a piece of fudge? I left it on the table.
Good. Yeah.
Or 2 or 3.
Y'all want anything?
I might eat another piece of fudge. I've already had one. I'll go in there though.
My dad said something about a story about going down to the train tracks to see the new diesel train.
Okay. A new diesel train, the first diesel train came through Greenbrier when I was in high school, or maybe we didn't designate it differently, but it was probably middle school. And it came through at about midnight, and people would stay up to see. It was so much faster than the other trains.
How old were you?
I was probably a freshman in high school, I was probably around a freshman in high school.
Okay.
That would be about the age I was.
Yeah.
So this boy that lived down the street asked me to go see the diesel with him. His mother had made ice cream, and his sister had asked some boy, and so I didn't want to go. And he's a nice boy. I hate to sound like I'm talking bad about him. His name
You can talk bad about him.
was Charles Carter, and he wasn't very good looking. And I didn't want to go, and I would run on ahead like I wasn't with him. That was stupid, but...
I didn't know you had that in you, Grandma.
Well, that was pretty stupid, wasn't it?
You got to do what you got to do. You saw a more handsome man off in the distance.
Yeah.
You're waiting on.
I was running after him, wasn't I? But Johnny has always gotten a kick out of that, so that's why he wanted me to tell you about that.
That is pretty funny. So tell me, how did you respond when he asked you to go?
I just didn't know what else to do. I just said, yeah, I would, you know. Guess I hated to say no.
So when you showed up, you were just trying to avoid being around him?
Yeah, that was terrible.
No, that's oh, that's
That family was good friends with Hugh's family. They the daddies worked together, the same company for the same company, and she had a crush on Hugh. She just lived right down the street, 1 block down from us.
So y'all were both pretty good-looking people then back in the day. Sounds like a lot of people were after y'all.
Well, I don't know about that, but
Got the Johnson charm, or the what? Remind me of your maiden name. I forget. What was your maiden name?
Anderson.
Anderson. Yeah, the Anderson charm. Talk about some of your pranks.
You know, the people that play the fiddle have a rosin the strings
Yeah, yeah.
to make the proper sound.
You got to rosin up the bow. Right?
And so you could tie a nail on one end of a long string and attach it to a house. And you could go off away from that house so if somebody came out, they didn't see you if somebody came out while you was doing a prank. But if you tighten that string that's attached to the house and rub this rosin across the string, it makes a loud noise. And so we did that sometimes in Greenbrier.
So would it just like scare them? Like what?
Yeah, they wouldn't know what it was, and they'd come out, but by that time, well, we'd be gone somewhere.
Could I tell you about one of his pranks?
Oh, yeah.
He and some boys found out how to get upstairs somewhere up next to the roof, and they would ring the bell early in the afternoon, and they never got caught. I'm surprised.
Oh wait, just to get out of school early?
Uh-huh.
Let me tell you how that was. There was a double office at the principal's office, and he was in the inner of the 2 offices, and there was an outer office, and the bell that rang and let the classes in and out and let school out and to begin school was in the first office, just around the corner, just off the hall. So we found out where the electricity box was in the school, and it had fuses in it, and certain fuses went to different things. Like some of them went to the lights in part of the building, and some of them went to other things. So we found out which fuse made the bell ring or not ring. So we would unscrew that fuse, which was away from the office, way away from the office. We'd unscrew that fuse and then go to the office. There wouldn't be anybody on the outer part of the office, and reach around the corner and turn the bell on. But it wouldn't ring because we had unscrewed the fuse. Then we'd go down to where the fuse box was and screw the fuse in, and that would ring the bell and let school out early. Now that's the story about
Wow.
And we never did get caught.
So
we did that 2 or 3 times.
So how much earlier would you let school out?
Or maybe 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And everybody would just leave.
Yeah, well, yeah. And then the principal would come out in the hall looking around, and didn't know he couldn't figure out how come the bell, who rung the bell.
That's awesome.
He probably thought somebody just came by the office and reached in and pulled the bell.
While we're on the pranks, one of my favorites is like when you were at Tennessee Tech and your record mile. Can you tell that story?
Well, I guess I could.
Let's hear that.
You see, we were, I played basketball, but they allowed me to travel sometimes with some of the other teams for whatever reason. So they had a track meet. Tennessee Tech had a track meet at the University of the South in Swanee. It was a three-way meet with Tennessee Tech, Swanee, and University of Tennessee. Well, I wasn't a track star. I just went along for the ride. But anyway, one of the people that ran the mile, the 4 times around the track, wasn't able to run. So the coach told me, Hugh, you've just finished basketball. Said we need you to run the mile, so we'll have a full team, three people, and so. I wasn't fast then. I wasn't a fast runner, but I agreed to run the mile. So about each lap is a quarter of a mile, and 4 laps is a mile. So around about 2/3 the way around the track, there was a little building where they kept certain track equipment in that building, but it was empty. They had the track equipment outside. And so I started running, and I was the last one to get to that little building. So I ran inside the building. And the rest of my team and the Tennessee and Swanee team, they kept running around the track. And on the 4th lap, I was all rested up. And after all the track people passed the little building, I ran out and I was fresh. I was ready to really run, and I passed them all and won the track meet.
And nobody ever knew?
Nobody ever said anything.
Was it true did I remember correctly, was that the fastest time for the school?
It was the school. It wasn't a record. It wasn't a college record or a national record of any kind, but it was a school record.
That's awesome. I don't know why. I always loved that story. That was always fun. All right. Huh?
I was going to say, see, his life was more colorful than mine. That's okay.
You were out there breaking hearts.
I don't know about that.
All right, let's see. So let's talk about when you worked at the drugstore. Is there any specific stories?
Well, I worked at a drugstore for a very short time. The man who owned the drugstore had crippling, well, it was RA, and he was terribly crippled, and it made him kind of ill, and he was hard to work for. Mm-hmm. And they sold, back then they sold ice cream and things at the pharmacy, and he showed me how to dip it. Instead of letting it be solid, he would have you to curve it, and there was not as much ice cream.
Make a little hole.
Make little holes in it, just a thin layer, really, know. And that's I didn't work there. Oh, I know. They're thinking, whoever said that was a good story. It was when I was working for a lady who had sort of a restaurant and dry goods store together. And on Sunday afternoon, for some reason, the teenagers would congregate there. And I was her brother, the lady who owned the ice cream shop. Her brother worked for her, and on Sunday afternoon there were a lot of teenagers there, and he and I were dipping ice cream, and it was running down my arms, and I said, "Oh my goodness, look how this ice cream's running down my legs." I was so embarrassed. See how exciting my life was.
How old were you when you worked?
I was a teenager.
You were a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Something about Dinky's store?
Yeah. There's no big story to tell about working at Dinky's store except for the fact that from the time I was in a freshman in high school until about 3 years of college, I worked for there weren't many grocery stores in Greenbrier, but this was the largest one, and he had a good business. T.M. Williams and Son was the name of the store, but the owner of the store was named Herman Williams, but most of the people didn't even know his name was Herman. He was a pretty short fella, and everybody called him Dinky, and that he didn't mind you calling him that because that's what everybody called him, and the children wouldn't just call him Dinky or the teenagers. He was Mr. Dinky. So I worked there for part-time, and in the summertime full-time. I worked there for about 7 years.
What about your summer job of marking cotton and tobacco?
Yeah. I had a part-time job. I said I worked at Dinky's store about 7 years, but one summer, the National Agriculture Department had a allotment that you couldn't raise but so much tobacco, the farmers. And to police that, somebody had to measure their allotment or their field where they had I said cotton, I meant tobacco. And so one summer I measured tobacco as a job, and I enjoyed doing that. I would go to various farms and measure their tobacco. And I'd try to get to a farm that I thought was clean, the people and all, about noon, so they'd ask me to eat lunch with them. So I would do that.
That's cool.
I did that all summer.
How old were you then?
19, 20.
I had 2 interesting summer jobs.
Yeah.
One was for National Life and Accident Insurance Company. Isn't that right, Hugh?
Yeah.
National Life. And I was called a messenger. Now it's computer, you know. But I would pick up some message at this desk and maybe take it upstairs. Or
That was in Nashville.
it was in Nashville. And then I had another one. I worked at a little restaurant in Harvest. Do you remember hearing about Harvest department store in Nashville? It was a real prominent store for years. And I just worked in it. It was a department store that had, sold clothes and furniture and everything. But it had this little shop. It was a real unique type little shop. And
That's cool. So what did you do there?
I was a waitress.
Okay. That's cool.
So
Did you enjoy it?
I did. Uh-huh.
Was it still like the same as it is now, like it was tip based, or was it an hourly job?
It was, I really don't remember. I think it was just a salary, I don't think it was hourly. I think it was just made so much each week, I believe.
All right. Let's hear the U-Haul story.
Okay, when we moved from Baton Rouge, Louisiana to Shelbyville, we all five sat in the front seat of a truck. Johnny got choked on a piece of candy, and I thought he was going to die, and I nearly jumped out of the truck, and Hugh was yelling at me, don't jump out of the truck, and he did finally get it up or down. I can't remember which, but it really scared us.
Why were you gonna jump out of the truck?
I don't know. That'd been worse. And I just felt like I had to do something, I guess. I don't know why I did that, but he really got choked. I think it was a lifesaver, maybe.
At that time, Reba wasn't driving, and we rented a U-Haul truck to moving from Baton Rouge to Shelbyville, Tennessee. And we had a device and hooked the car that we had on the back of the truck and pulled the car while I drove the truck. We pulled that car all the way from Baton Rouge to Shelbyville.
That's pretty wild. So y'all were super tight. Like, that's a long trip.
We were. Yeah, that was a long trip.
I bet. What else happened? I mean, was there any other?
Just
things I remember?
crowdedness and, of course, children getting tired and worn out and
Oh, yeah.
a little bit fussy at times. But we made it. And
Fact of the business is, we came through Huntsville, and that's the first time we'd ever been in Huntsville, going to Shelbyville, and never thinking for a minute that we might be living in Huntsville at some time.
Yeah. So did y'all always like Huntsville? Like when y'all first moved here, did y'all?
I think so. I didn't like the church at first, but I learned to love it.
Is Highlands where y'all started?
Highlands was where we started the church, and we went there over 50 years, I guess.
Okay.
And of course, then we had to close.
Mm-hmm.
But we like Home Street.
Oh yeah.
Happy about that. There was one that Johnny kept repeating some words, and for so long we couldn't figure out what he was saying, and it was some commercial that I can't think of right now. Can you remember, Hugh, what that commercial was? But we couldn't figure out what he was. Wish I could think what it was. But he was saying this commercial, and we finally figured it out. It was cute. I wish I could remember it. And it was funny, though, because for so long we didn't have any idea, but he'd say it all the time. And they were Debbie and Eddie were crazy about Johnny. In fact, they would fuss over him. Debbie would say, "I had him first." And in Eddie's bedroom, he barely had room for his bed and a chest of drawers. The chest of drawers touched the side of the bed, and that's where he kept a lot of his trinkets and little toys. And he would lay Johnny on the bed, and one by one he would take out a trinket and let him play with it a minute, and then he'd give him something else, you know. So they had a lot of patience. I had a lot of help with him.
Yeah.
I told him I didn't know if he was a good baby or not, because they kept him entertained.
It helped you out, yeah.
Yeah, he really was. And I had to tell them stories before he was born, too. They say, "Tell us that's what he'll do again." I said, "Well, he might get into your toys and things." And they didn't seem to care, but they wanted I know I'd be ironing and they'd be sitting down there, and I had to tell them stories about when the baby came, you know.
Oh, yeah.
They wanted to hear them over and over.
So tell me everybody's age differences.
Debbie is 7 years older than Johnny, and Eddie is 5 years older than Johnny.
So like even in that, did y'all plan to have like 3 kids or?
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
We didn't plan any of them.
Really? Just kind of whatever happened.
Just right.
Yeah. Did y'all know after Johnny y'all were done? He was too much to handle. No.
Well, I never thought they were too much to handle, but we did think 3 was enough.
Yeah.
They were all 3 sweet and cute babies.
Oh yeah. That's awesome.
The mother wouldn't be prejudiced, would she?
No, I don't think so. Y'all want to talk about the 4th of July celebrations at the school across from, I guess, the 4th of July celebrations?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Greenbrier 4th of July celebration was next to Christmas. And when it first started, the schoolyard would just be full of people. You just milled around, and it was just like a crowd around the different booths selling different things. And people came back for years, and they had to mark off streets and everything. And we always just loved it. And so did the children after they got old enough to enjoy it. And we could, at night, they barbecued the pork on the 3rd of July night, and you could hear the people over there. You couldn't sleep. But then after, even before we left Greenbrier, I think that it wasn't as popular for some reason. People didn't come back like they once did. But it was always a lot of fun to us because we didn't have that many things, you know, when we were teenagers. And from the time that I knew things and knew what was going on, I knew about the 4th of July picnic.
Yeah.
So it was, and being right across from it, of course, made it more fun.
Yeah. Did you guys go on a date there one time?
I don't think that I don't remember, do you? I don't remember us
I don't think
doing
It's more of a
that.
childhood memory, I guess.
Mm-hmm. It is. And you enjoyed it too, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people, it was almost like a homecoming. People would come back, you know, to see other people. And
Back in those days, too, in later years, well, they had carnival rides on the grounds.
ball games, had to have a baseball game, and we'd have some quartets. The John Daniel was real popular during our teenage years, and they would come and play. They were very good gospel music. And but it was a big thing in our little town of Greenbrier. We really looked forward to it and had a good time. And the children have mentioned that Daddy would hand them tickets and say, go get you some more watermelon or go get you some more ice cream or something. And so they always look forward to it too.
I guess I do want to hear a little bit about the the basketball stuff. You can talk about that a little bit. Playing basketball and then in high school and into college.
Well, in high school, I guess you could say that after I graduated from high school, between that time and the time that I went to Tennessee Tech, they picked the 10 best players, what they thought the 10 best players in Tennessee were, and we played the 10 best players in Kentucky, and we spent a week. Both teams spent a week each in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and we played the game at Western Kentucky, and we spent that week practicing in the summertime. So I was considered at that time one of the 10 best players in Tennessee.
How old were you? Was this your senior year?
It was right after graduation, the summer after I graduated.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to brag,
No, that's cool.
but I'm just telling it.
Yeah.
And I was a good player in high school, and we didn't lose a regular season game for 3 straight years. But when I went to Tennessee Tech, there was more competition. I was not a star by any means at Tennessee Tech, but I was good enough to start several of the games during the 4 years. But most of the time, I was not a starter at Tennessee Tech. But I enjoyed being on the team and traveling and going to various colleges to play basketball.
That's cool.
And that is where he started being called Hugo.
When I went to Tennessee Tech on a scholarship, so college didn't cost me and my parents anything. I was always proud of that. Just before school started in the fall, when I was going to be a freshman, the athletic department, the football coach, wrote me a letter to come to football camp to help them with the football camp. Well, what could I do to help with the football team? What they was wanting me to do is to run down the balls and be on the field when I might be needed for something. And they would send me on various little missions around the campus to do something for the football team. And they started saying, Hugo, do so-and-so. Hugo, do so-and-so. And they meant to go, not to be a part of my name, but they were saying, Hugh, go do so-and-so. But I got the name of Hugo. And most of the people, for the 4 years I was at Tech, didn't really know probably that my name was Hugh, because the name Hugo stuck with me.
Was Hugo not a common nickname for somebody named Hugh?
It might have been, but I don't remember anybody else.
When Johnny was a baby, too, I don't know why, but I guess I called him Hugo just to be funny or something. I don't know. But anyway, he'd wake up at night, and I always got up, but Johnny would call Hugo. I said I trained him that way.
That's awesome.
But he'd stand in there and yell, Hugo.
That's awesome. Can we talk about, Granddaddy's fun times with cousins at Granny Terry's house and his Papa Johnson's farm?
I don't know any stories to tell.
Yeah.
I just always enjoyed. In the summertime, when I was in elementary school, particularly when I was in the 5th, 6th, 7th grade, I would spend a week at my grandfather Johnson's house and farm, and I enjoyed that very much. I learned a whole lot at their house about the farm and farming and animals and so forth. He owned about 230 acres, and sometimes he'd let me plow in the field. He didn't have tractors. Not many of the farmers had tractors then. They used horses and mules. And I was able to do a little bit of plowing and corn planting for him.
That's awesome. And then let's talk briefly about whenever you ruptured your appendix and almost died, I guess. Tell us about that.
When I was 4 years old, we lived, as I mentioned previously, in Sequatchie County, Tennessee, not too far from Chattanooga. And I got sick. Of course, I don't remember it because I was just 4 years old. But the doctor that was doctors came to your house back in those days instead of you going to their house or office. And in the rural areas, they came to your house. And the doctor never did suggest that I go to the hospital or anything. But finally, my dad decided that I was in such a shape I needed to go to Chattanooga to the hospital. That was the nearest hospital. There wasn't a hospital in that county. So they took me to Chattanooga to the hospital, and by that time my appendix had so-called ruptured and got me infected all in my stomach area. And they thought I was going to die. They didn't think that I'd make it, but the good Lord was beneficent to me and saved my life. And it was in such a shape that it wouldn't take a thread. They couldn't sew it up. And so it just was an open wound for a long time. And I still, even at 90 years old, I've still got a big scar there where that happened.
When Hugh was stationed at Jacksonville, I was able to go down and stay with him a few months, and we were looking for an apartment, and I can't remember how we ran into this lady, or maybe it was a realtor, and she had a friend anyway. What was their name, Hugh?
Hood.
The Hoods. And they didn't have any children, and so they would call us and say, "You are our children." And we would when we first married, if we hadn't quit eating, we would get up on Saturday. I guess you were usually off on Saturday. Hugh was usually off on Saturday because we would fry a pound of bacon, and I don't know how many eggs we'd scramble, and I guess toast probably. But I was sick because I was pregnant with Debbie, and she would come to my door during the day when Hugh wasn't there, and she would put a sandwich or something out for me to eat. They took really good care of us, and while we were living there, Hugh's mother and daddy and Lynn came to see us. It was at Thanksgiving, and Hugh had the duty, so he didn't get to be there this night that I'm talking about. They invited us down for cocktails. And Mr. and Miss Johnson drank theirs, and we could have. But Lynn and I found a potted plant where they wouldn't see us, and we poured ours out on that plant. But
y'all just didn't want to have anything to do with it?
No, I had a good reason that I didn't want to touch it.
Yeah.
And
but I've always thought that was kind of funny.
And when we lived when I was on the ship in Philadelphia, we had an apartment in Woodbury, New Jersey. Now, I'm sorry to say that I smoked most of my adult life till about 25 or 30 years ago, and I quit. But I had smoked that, and I had an ashtray up on the edge of a table. Well, Debbie was about 6 or 8 or 10 months old. She wasn't walking yet, but she could pull up on that table. And we caught her one day pulling up on that table eating the cigarette butts.
Oh my goodness. She was just eating them?
She didn't eat them, but she had a mouthful of them she was about to choke on.
How old was she?
She was still just a baby, maybe 10 months old.
I mean, smoking, everyone smoked at the time, though, right?
Right, that was in New Jersey. And another experience. I caught the milkman and told him that we wanted to have milk delivered to our apartment. I remember it was B4 because I told him B4 and he mocked me. He said, "Okay, I'll bring it to B4." And
in New Jersey.
uh-huh.
So he's making fun of your son.
Yes, he was. That didn't go over. I didn't say anything, but I thought, well, that wasn't very nice.
Oh man. Had you ever had your accent made fun of before?
No, but another time we were somewhere and I was buying some cards. It must have been a Hallmark shop. And I hadn't said anything. I guess I had just taken my cards up there. And when she heard, when I did speak, that head went up. Her head had been down, and when I spoke, her head went up. She looked at me,
Oh,
and I knew she was thinking about my southern drawl.
Yeah. I remember one time Dad got offended. We were in Nashville, and some person at a store made fun of my dad's accent.
My goodness.
He got offended.
Yeah, Johnny comes to our defense. I said, we need him. He took Hugh to the doctor, to his cardiologist one day, and the nurse was real rude to Hugh.
Recently?
It was after his surgery. And she said something about hopping up on the stool or something, and Johnny said, well, he can't hop. He just had surgery. And then, I don't know whether it was at the same time or another time, he asked her what part of the North she is from. He kind of has a grudge against it. Have you noticed that?
Sometimes, yeah. It's funny.
He said, "What part of the North are you from?" Oh, you better not let him know something's wrong. He'll take care of it.
I know. Tell me what it was like growing up during the Great Depression.
I honestly did not know the difference of when I was in the Depression and when I wasn't. We had enough to eat and enough to wear, and I know some people were worse off than that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what he'll say, but I really didn't know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm very similar. I didn't know the difference either because I was just a child. I was born in 1929, and the so-called Depression started about that time. And it wasn't over until World War II started in 1941, and the war effort started a lot of additional work. And so by that time, the so-called Depression was over. But for those 10 or 12 years there was a lot of poor people and people that didn't have jobs, and sometimes they had to beg to get something to eat. And they didn't have. I went to school early on in real rural places. And real rural school, and people in the communities I lived in were relatively poor. And but like I said, at the time I was just a child, and my folks at least had money to eat on and to buy our clothes, so I didn't really know the difference.
Was World War II scary to you guys, like when you would hear what was going on?
I was a little bit. I had an uncle, my favorite on Daddy's side. His name was Smitty. He was in the Navy. He was sort of in the thick of things, and I worried about him.
Yeah.
But I don't think we were old enough to realize the full impact of a war. I wasn't, I know. And I think you're kind of wanting to know what the situation was with us back in those days. And I'll tell you some things that, like going to see the train go through. But on Sunday afternoon, some of my friends and I would go home and eat and keep our church clothes on, and then we'd go walking. That was what we said, let's go walking. Sometimes we'd go across town and visit my grandparents or maybe somebody else, or just, we'd usually go get a Coke and then just walk around. And I mean, that was entertainment for us. We didn't have any big time things to do, but we were happy and enjoyed, our friends. And that was one difference in today's time. There's so many things for young people to do, but we were just as happy, I think, in our situation. And I was thinking not long ago, now we are closed up the year round. In the summer we have our air conditioner and we stay inside. In the winter, of course, we have to have heat. But in Greenbrier, I was thinking about it really strongly. I don't know why, but it was just like you were in an open situation in town. The doors were open, people were walking by, and it seems like a different world now. And you were talking to people as they passed by, and we lived probably on the busiest two streets intersection other than the one that went by the highway, that the highway went by. And we saw a lot of people walking on the sidewalk, and they went too fast around those corners. We would sit there and talk about that. But at night, we would sit out in those swings, and Hugh and I courted. We had 2 swings, and that's where we courted, on our swings on the front
We had
porch.
3 swings.
That's what. Well, I thought I changed it, but I didn't. Did I? But anyway, that's sort of like how our life was back then, and I always loved church and school, and that was a big part of my life, and
Definitely.
so I was just trying to think of some ways that maybe are different from now, and certainly I think that is being open like that.
It was a simpler time. I guess people weren't maybe as private where you
Right.
Let's just start with watching y'all's kids grow up and have families of their own and kind of go from there.
Okay. Well, as Hugh has already said, we had 2 of our children while he was in the Navy, and we lived with my parents in part of the time and his part of the time. But it was fun too. I mean, it was a good time, and I had a tendency maybe to worry about them too much, but I don't guess you can worry too much. The Bible tells us not to worry, but it's hard for me not to. And they were all, we were blessed that our children have never done, they're not perfect, I know that, but we feel like they've all done well and they're good, and we're proud of our grandchildren and what you do, and we love you more than you know. But we've wanted to be, we were younger when you were little, and Stacy and Kelly, and we kept you all a lot, and Stacy and Kelly, and we always enjoyed having you, and it was time of great anticipation, before you were born, and we didn't find out ahead of time what ours were going to be.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
They didn't do that back then. I didn't know that was possible. But we've seen a lot of changes for sure, and some are good and some are not. And but the children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren have always been a blessing, and we've had some rough times, but I really think that's life.
Mm-hmm.
And we certainly always loved all of you.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to keep you and say funny things that you all have done.
Yeah, yeah.
And Aaron, a lot of the time will say, I don't get it. And there's some other expression that if I can't think what it is, I don't get it. And
Is there any other things that y'all, while we have the setup here, any other
It's
topics?
hard to think of something when you're trying to.
I
So
know.
I don't have anything else, I don't think.
I'm bad to do that. I'll probably think, well, I should have told Aaron that, or I should have said this.
Tell me what it's like to be 90. I mean, I know you're a couple months away, but still,
Mhm.
like, I mean, I don't know. It's got to be cool to look back. I mean, y'all have, you know, raised this now pretty large family.
I
mean,
know
we just
it.
had Christmas with, this past Christmas we had, 2 additions, and like it just keeps on growing.
Right, there are 24 of us now.
What is that like to know that, I don't know, because y'all had 3 kids and now y'all's kids are having grandkids? Like, is that kind of surreal? Like, is it
It
wild that you have
is. It is.
24 people?
When I think of that, it really is.
Yeah.
You just never feel like Abraham sometimes, But we're certainly proud of you, and just we talk about you. Y'all wouldn't believe how much your grandchildren would know how much we talk about you, think about you, and ask about you. And
Mm-hmm.
it's
Well-
been a pleasure from all of you.
What would y'all what advice would y'all, first off, how many years have y'all been married now?
68.
60. Oh, 70 is, dang, that's wild. Man. So what advice would y'all give for a long marriage?
Well,
How have y'all made it this long?
forgiveness. You have forgiveness in your heart, and kindness, and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they need the same. Your spouse needs the same from you. I mean, that's both parties. Just sometimes I look at things and wonder why I got upset over them or something. You can look back. I said, wish I could live my life over. I think I could do a better job. Unfortunately, we don't have that privilege, but you do the best you think that you can at the time. You have to make decisions and discipline and do things that sometimes you don't want to have to do, but that you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I really think that having God in your life helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's essential. And I just feel like that if I didn't have God, I know I'm not as good as I ought to be, nearly. I'm thankful God has given us we have a choice of eternal life, because I never would have made it, but I do think that's very important to have God in your lives, and I know it helps.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. It's only by grace through Jesus that
That's right.
even worthy at all. I mean, we're not worthy
Right.
at all. It's only because of Jesus' sacrifice.
That's
for
right.
us. Yeah. What about you, Grandad? Do you have any advice for us youngsters, or for any,
I can't think of any.
It's hard when you're on the spot.
Billy Graham has said in one of his books, I can't remember where I read it, but I know he said it, that the 2 greatest things that help you with your Christianity is humbleness and forgiveness. And to me, that makes a lot of sense, too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And to be willing to admit sometimes that you're wrong. And that's not always easy to do.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy to forgive, but we have to struggle and try, and if we want to be forgiven. So I think that's really important in a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
If you,
Definitely. Well, I guess unless there's anything else, is there any other stories that are coming to mind, or anything else at all before we
well,
finish?
I can't think of anything here.
All right.
Well, I want the great-grands to know that I love them too. You know, it's getting farther and farther, but every time there's a new baby, I'm thrilled about it and love them.
Yeah. Well, thank y'all so much.
Well, thank
I
you.
know it's a lot. Here, stay there real quick. Let's get a picture. This thing's rolling. Can y'all just smile into the camera with me?
Oh, okay. You want me to look in the camera
yeah,
this
now.
time? Okay.
Awesome. Got it.
Well, thank you,
Yeah,
Aaron.
thank y'all.
Yeah, thank you.
That was sweet of you to take your time and effort to come and spend the whole afternoon with us.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I'm glad we did this.